The first duty of every government is the security and welfare of the people. Hello and welcome to Politics Explained, where we break down the issues shaping our nation and our future. I'm Oluwayemi Adelakun. And of course, today we are reassessing Nigeria's security strategy in the face of persistent threats from terrorism and banditry to kidnapping and communal conflict. Are the current approaches working, and what new strategies should Nigeria adopt to ensure that we see the end of all that we're experiencing in Nigeria? And of course, I'm not alone in the studio this evening. I have with me Professor Isaac Olawale Albert, who is a professor of the Nigerian University of Ibadan. And allow me to read to you, his profile this evening just before we continue. And of course, I have his profile with me. Professor Isaac Olawale Albert is a professor of African History and Peace and Conflict Studies at the University of Ibadan, a renowned security analyst and an editor-in-chief of the African Union's African Journal on Terrorism. Prof, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Let's start this way, Professor. In Nigeria at some point, yes, insecurity here and there, but it was never this intense. And then it was intense, at some point, 2012, 2013, 2015, and then it stopped at some point. And now the situation has become really serious. What really happened?
Well, thank you so much for taking a historical look at the state of security in this country.
Right.
We have never had it so bad. When Nigeria transitioned to civil rule in 1999, we actually thought that there will be sustainable peace in the country, given the global argument that when a society democratizes, that peace will follow.
Okay.
So that was what we were expecting in the year after 1999. But we have realized that gradually problems have been building up. And the first major problem we had since the political transition was the Sharia crisis, as a result of which many parts of northern Nigeria broke into different types of conflict and people were killed. And then gradually from the year 2003 upwards, we started having the Boko Haram crisis. Boko Haram crisis did not start in the year 2009. The movement started around 2003 and it built up gradually to 2009, where Mohammed Yusuf was killed. And by the year 2010, the group now referred to as Boko Haram resorted to terrorist attacks.
Okay.
And since then, things have been getting worse. But in 2014, before we had the 2015 election, there was a reduction of the problem. But shortly after we had a new regime, the Buhari regime, in the year 2015, things started to, degenerating again, and Boko Haram crisis, which was restricted to the northeast, now started influencing politics in the northwest, and banditry started in the northwest, and there was a merger of banditry and Boko Haram crisis, and later the problem started moving from the northwest to the north central, from Zamfara to Sokoto, to Niger State, to Kwara State, and now the southwest. And our hands are full now.
All right, so people are asking the question, a lot of persons are even arguing that the current security architecture, the system that we have in Nigeria, is outdated, and that's why we're experiencing this. Where do you stand?
Well, thank you so much. The system is outdated, but I am surprised that the Nigerian state has failed to improve on the security architecture of the country. And I'm saying this because I have close working relationship with security agencies in this country. I know the system to have the best in the world in terms of human resources. They may not have sufficient equipment for dealing with the problems in the country. But our military officers, even police officers, are well-informed people, and therefore I was actually thinking that they will be on top of the situations. Unfortunately, things get worse every day, and one culprit that everybody is calling attention to, because each time you say things are getting worse, everybody points at one person, and that one person is called political will.
Okay.
That is the name. So you discover that the country does not seem to have the political will for enabling the armed forces to do their work. I think this is the problem. You know, the military now, they look at faces before taking action, but I do know that given the caliber of people we have in the military, and even given the little equipment they have, we should not be where we are. But I actually don't think that there is that commitment to solve the problem. I don't think, you know, the political will is not there to confront the problems and professionally deal with the problems. And this is why it is escalating.
Okay, so what is the role of poverty, unemployment, and illiteracy, you know, when it comes to security in Nigeria?
Well, I think that's a fundamental issue. When you come to a type of society where security problems are escalating on a daily basis, you want to say, okay, what are the causative factors? Why the problems? One of the problems, as you have rightly mentioned, is poverty. But scientifically, it is not all poor people that are aggressive. You know, when I move around Africa, when I go around the countries, I know of many countries that are poorer than Nigeria, but that are peaceful. So it depends on the other intervening variables. When you are poor and you have poor people that are ingrained in societies where there is unbridled ethnicity, idle religiosity. You know, people claim to be religious even when they don't know God. You know, they fight over religion, but these are people whose minds are very dirty. And then you have people fighting ethnic wars, claiming to be fighting to defend their people. Now, when you match those factors, ethnicity and idle religiosity with poverty, then you have the kind of escalation that we are witnessing today. So people say they are engaged in violent extremism because they are poor. But they are not the poor. They are not the poorest across the continent. Other African countries are peaceful, but people make reference to Nigeria as a worst case scenario. It's very shameful. It's unfortunate.
Right. So you mentioned the soldiers, the army, even the police officers. And some persons are saying, yes, just like you mentioned, they have what it takes. Because Nigeria, even at the time, helped some neighboring countries to solve insecurity.
Yes. Even now, Nigeria helps to train people in some other parts of the world. Many years ago, I worked for AFRICOM, the U.S. Army, you know, in charge of Africa's this thing. They rated Nigeria as the Nigerian Army as one of the best in the world. Very efficient, very, you know, we have all it takes to be able to defeat our enemies. But if you insert the best in an environment that is not ready for development, you are going to have plenty of problems. I mean, it's like when you come to our universities and sometimes you see things not working. But when we go abroad, when we go to Yale, we go to Harvard, we go to Oxford, we operate at the toppest level. But anytime you are in this country, Nigeria will happen to you. And I think this is what is basically happening. Our military officers are well trained. They are well trained. And if the little equipment they have, they can actually perform wonders with those equipment. But when you have political leaders who are not actually interested in peace, then it becomes a problem. And that is why everybody is always calling attention to political will. And in my own academic analysis now, I regard political will as a human being. who is opposed to the development of this country, and it's unfortunate.
Okay, what about the case of internal sabotage? There was a case recently around Justice Crack, and then a soldier sent him a clip or a video or maybe a picture now of what soldiers were being served in camp. And then another soldier recently also came out to talk about the fact that they get their own uniforms by themselves, even though the headquarters came out to debunk that, to say that is not true. So what are you going to say about the welfare system of these people who are in charge of safeguarding the lives of, Nigerians?
Well, I think that is another important factor, corruption. The resources made available to our officers, how are these resources used? Those who have decided to lay down their lives to fight for the country, when they get to battlefront and they are not properly, cared for, when their entitlements are not paid to them, when they have to buy their uniforms, they have to kit themselves, it demoralizes them. But I think if there is any problem of corruption in the military today, and people are getting away with it, it is because we lack the political will to do, our leaders lack the political will to do what is right. Because if our leaders are determined to solve the problems, the soldiers that are doing the work would know that they are dealing with a system that will not brood corruption, that will not actually take excuses. But everybody is behaving the way they want to behave, because they know there is no person who will call them to order.
Okay.
Otherwise, we ought not to be where we are today. It's like violence just moving freely across the country. Violence moving freely across the country, and everybody is afraid today.
Let's talk about the intelligence system. Some residents have claimed that the security officers get prior intelligence even before the attack, and still that attack will still happen. People will be abducted. A lot of persons, will get killed. Is that not an issue? Because there was even a case in Benue. They even wrote letters, to the community, and then weeks, days passed. These people came. They abducted people. They killed many Nigerians, and nothing happened.
Well, that's another problem. On television stations like, though not yours, I see people saying the problem is absence of actionable intelligence. In some cases, the intelligence is there. The intelligence is provided, and not much is done before some of the violent attacks take place. You see, in some cases, it's difficult for you to know the intervening variables. When these people have the intelligence, why are they not acting? A layman will say they are not acting because they want the problem to happen. But a scientist who moves near the system may have explanations that are totally different from what you see. But I think the corruption we are talking about cuts across all strata of the society, and therefore, well, you might say these people have the intelligence, but they are unable to act because of corruption. That's a factor. But they may not be able to act, probably because of the equipment at their disposal. 3, they may not act because it is not in the interest of some people, whether within the military or outside the military, for action to be taken. So it's difficult for you to really say.
Do you think the president is doing enough to actually, ensure that we reduce insecurity in this country? Because there's a video of him circulating online. I think a certain interviewer asked him a question that, what's your comment on insecurity in the country? And the president said, okay, we need to ensure that nobody will kill another person because of anything in the war. So beyond that, if you take a look at his activities, his statement, and especially with the Oriri attack now, do you think it has been effective in any way?
Well, I would not say the president is doing enough. What I would say rather is that the president is doing a lot. But we can see very clearly that it's enough. It's not sufficient for keeping this country safe. It's doing a lot, but things are getting worse. The security situation of the country is getting worse. And therefore, one would actually say that more has to be done by the president, at dealing with the problems. Now, in dealing with the problems, I want to break my submission into two.
Okay.
You have the kinetic solutions and you have the non-kinetic solutions. The kinetic solutions have to do with the use of force, use of the military. Now, we want to ask ourselves, have we been able to provide our military with sufficient equipment? I know that with the little they have, they can perform better. But we need to ask the question, are they provided enough equipment? And I think even from the government side point of view, the answer will be no. Because the president came up recently to say, we have ordered for 3 Apache helicopters needed for our kind of battles, and that they will be supplied next year. So that is to say that the president himself is aware that for this battle to be won, you need to bring in some attack helicopters. And I think the issue of attack helicopters must have been coming from the problem of civilian mistargeting that we are witnessing recently. In the past 5 years, several hundreds of people have been killed, through air attacks. And what is coming up from our findings is that some of these aircraft, they bomb from distances that make it difficult for them to be able to really properly attack military objectives, to be able to say these are the enemies. And so at the end of almost every bombing of critical sites, innocent civilians get killed. Is becoming a problem. And I think that is why the president now is saying, okay, let us get Apache helicopters that will fly at low altitude and be able to see the people very, very well before identifying who and who should be bombed. So that the president actually said that they have ordered for helicopters and they will come next year is to say that he is aware.
Is next year not too far? Looking at the
situation. No. That's part of the problem. That's part of the problem. Next year, because yesterday we did not plan for it. Because if we planned for it, we shouldn't be talking about next year. In fact, we should be able to say we have the equipment on ground, or that the equipment will come this month. But for us to say next year is also to force us to ask the question, how many more Nigerians will die
before next year?
Before next year. So let's say, the point I'm trying to make here is that probably the military need more equipment than we have now. But when you look at the non-kinetic approach aspect, you're actually looking at how to stop these problems beyond the use of military force. Beyond the use of military force. Now, you can break the non-kinetic approach into two. You have the preventive mechanisms. Why are these people fighting? They are fighting because of poverty. So the non-kinetic discourse there will be, to what extent is the government fighting poverty? Are we not actually increasing poverty? Because as I was coming here now, I was listening to, at a host into traffic hold up, I was listening to people. Everybody is talking about hunger. So long as Nigerians are talking hunger, they will continue to drift in the direction of troublemaking. So to what extent are we managing the economy well? To what extent are we dealing with poverty? To what extent are we providing jobs for people who can be easily recruited into terrorist gangs? To what extent are we actually making life easy for people? So that is the preventive aspect. At that level, you are discussing preventive diplomacy. But now, when you come to the battle dealing with those involved in the conflict, you are now looking at what is called DDR, demobilization, the reintegration, and so on. So the question is the fighters, those who are fighting, what mechanisms do you need for retrenching them from warfare? You know, those who are fighting, you can deplete their population through a DDR process. You know, you bring them in, you bring them out through different DDR strategies and make them to become peaceful. And when you take some, if you take some people out of the Boko Haram gang, you reduce the number of people involved in banditry, you are actually doing non-kinetic warfare. Yes, it's warfare, because you are depleting the camp of the enemy to strengthen the camp of the state. To what extent are we doing that? Now, when I look at the things they are doing around this issue of DDR, you begin to ask yourself that probably, you begin to say that probably there is no coordination. You have what is called Operation Safe Corridor, Operation Safe Corridor, which is managed by the Nigeria government with the military. You know, those they call repentant Boko Haram.
Rehabilitation,
they are rehabilitating.
Is that not part of the problem? Because I think I mentioned it at the
That's what I'm saying. I'm coming to that.
Okay.
To say there is no coordination. Now, you are doing that. You say these people are repentant Boko Haram members. To what extent are you doing that scientifically? You know, you process somebody who has been fighting under Boko Haram crisis, who is engaged in a value-based crisis, killing people. Some have killed 100, 200. Then you want to rehabilitate them in 1 or 2 months. You know, it doesn't happen like that. And then when you have rehabilitated them, you know, quote and unquote, you give them life support resources, and you integrate them into the society, and many of them will go and they will become bandits. They will leave Boko Haram and become bandits, or some of them will come into our communities and be riding Okada, you know, working for the enemy of the state. And so it is not well managed. Then you have what also is called the Kaduna model. The present governor of Kaduna is actually taking people out of violent extremism, is rehabilitating them gradually. And to what extent is it being done scientifically, one will not say. Then we have the Borno model, which Governor Zulum he put in place. So what we're just trying to say is that we have people called repentant terrorists. To what extent are these people really repentant? And then when they repent, or what are the processes for making them to be transformed? And then if at all they are transformed, what are the mechanisms for monitoring and evaluating their presence? So we are not scientific about it. And that is why when I saw our caption, Reassessing Nigeria's Security Strategy, you know, when I saw it, I said to myself, do we even have a strategy? We don't have a strategy.
There's no strategy.
Yes, it's like we're just doing trial and error. We're just doing trial and error. And trial and error in security management doesn't work. Politicization of security management is dangerous. We have politicized security management in this country. You don't even know when politicians are really honest or dishonest about what they are doing about this thing. Recently, the Senate president said that the present high level of terrorism in Nigeria will go down after elections. So And then you are now...
So is it political in a way? Because even this area attack, sorry to cut you, some
yes.
are saying it is political in a way.
No, that is what he has confessed. Because you see, when somebody who is occupying that type of position says that type of thing, you begin to say that these people know what is happening. It is we outside the system that do not know what is happening. Because when he said, look, don't worry, the tension will come down after election, he tells you clearly that they themselves know, are probably a part of the processes for politicizing security in this country. And that is why our hands are full. So in some cases, if there is no response from the president, if the responses of our military people wobble, if nobody is seen to be doing anything concrete, probably it's because of this demon that we call political will. So political will is a very dangerous factor in the security of this country. And so long as there is no, I was just thinking of these young people that were taken in Ogbomoso. And I was asking myself, if these children were to be children of our leaders, would they be as quiet as they are? But it's because these are children of very poor people, people who are, in the words of Buhari, are like dots in a circle. So nobody cares. And, when it rains, when it rains at home, I ask myself, where will all those small children believe staying? So they stay under the element for what? They have not committed any offense. Their mathematics teacher, who decided to go and teach in a rural area, was beheaded.
And then I even read a report that the wife is asking the federal government to please help with recovering his body so they can bury him properly.
Yes, they refused. So it's really, at this moment, it's difficult to be a Nigerian. It's difficult to be a Nigerian.
Another report I read, Prof, is that these people are asking to speak with the governor directly.
Yes, they said they don't want any private negotiation. They want direct link with the government. And that is to tell you that they are not just ordinary kidnappers. So there's a need for us to investigate what political objectives they are pursuing. Because when they say they don't want private discussions, that they want direct link with the governor, then you begin to ask yourself, what is the agenda? And to what extent are we as a state working towards understanding what the issues are? Because it's not, I don't think it's ordinary. There is more to it than we are probably being told.
Okay, I read some tweet online, and some Nigerians submitted that there's an attack against education because the school.
No, that has been very clearly established since the kidnapping of Chibok girls, Dapchi girls, Kankara boys, and it's now very clear that there is attack on education, and I think it was within that framework that the federal government started what is called Safe School Initiative. Last year I was in Senegal, and I attended a big global meeting where people were talking about the Safe School initiatives around the world, and they mentioned the Nigerian model.
Okay.
And I couldn't actually ask them which Nigerian model, because these people come to schools, any school of their choice, they take as many children as possible, they take teachers, and so I don't think we're doing enough.
All right, let's also talk about this factor now. Negotiating with these bandits or maybe terrorists, paying of ransom, is it helping us in any way? Because some Nigerians have said this is the reason why this is still happening on a daily basis, that we need to stop, paying ransom or maybe even negotiating with these people. While there are other Nigerians who feel it doesn't matter how much you pay. Can you save the lives of people?
Well, paying ransom is not something that is peculiar to Nigeria. It's a global strategy. It's a global non-kinetic strategy. When you're in a dirty situation, you pay ransom. And I think the clearest example here was many years ago when America had to pay ransom to get a corporal released, I think in Afghanistan. And in addition to giving money to I think to the Taliban, America had to release 5 prisoners, just to, so it's something that is recognized globally. But you get to that level when you have tried your best using the kinetic approach. So you don't just say, somebody comes to your house and then you just pay. No, you pay only when you have reached the stage where you are saying, you are acknowledging the fact that your military does not have the capacity to solve the problem. So when you look at it, when you look at the Nigerian situation, it's like we are yet to show that the military is unable to do it. So in other words, the military has not attempted anything very serious, and the first thing you just do is to say, we will pay. So it questions, it indirectly securitizes or demonizes the capacity of the Nigerian military. Because each time our state officials go out to pay, you are indirectly saying your military cannot solve the problem. And it is not good for the image of the country. It's not good for the image of it's not good for the image of the country. It's not good for the image of the Nigerian military. Now, when you look at the people the repentant terrorists that are under Operation Safe Corridor, look at their faces. Or you look at the people that are under Borno model or Kaduna model, you see their faces. You want to ask yourself, are these the people that the Nigerian military cannot defeat? Because these are human beings, you see them, some of them very young, and so we have not, the point I'm trying to make.
Do you know that a brigadier was actually murdered in cold blood?
Not only one. They have killed up to 3-4 brigadier generals now. And when you talk of soldiers in the rank of colonel, lieutenant colonel, they've killed many. They've killed many. So the question is, are we actually saying that we don't have the capacity to solve the problem militarily? Now, why we need to keep asking this question is that paying violent extremists escalates problem. Because when you pay them, they use the resources to acquire more arms. When you grant them amnesty and so on, and you don't have mechanisms for monitoring and evaluating the outcomes of your thing, these people become the foot soldiers of their peers or colleagues that are still fighting. They provide them actionable intelligence. They do all kinds of things. So the way we are doing it is actually escalating the problems and not reducing it.
All right, let's talk about the involvement of the United States now. This is the, let me read the words of Sheikh Gumi to you. He said, involving the U.S. will attract foreign terrorist groups to Nigeria. And then there was a time he even said that, the situation has become intense because we have involved the United States. And then a lot of Nigerians are not buying that statement. Even though there was a time some Nigerians were saying, oh, let's not involve the U.S., they might have ulterior motives and things like that. But involving the United States, because I know they even did something recently, they killed a top ISIS leader. And then a lot of persons, actually celebrated the U.S. while some were complaining. So involving the United States, is it helping us in any way?
Well, In security analysis, there is what we call conflict progression, you know, and conflict progression has 9 tracks. But the 4th track is conflict goes outside immediate community. The moment your conflict goes outside the immediate community, it becomes dangerous. If a woman is having problem with the husband, if a man is having problem with his wife, and the conflict gets to the 4th stage where it goes outside the immediate community. Now, going outside the immediate community is you are involving a 3rd party. The moment you involve a 3rd party in security analysis, your problem is escalating. Because the 3rd party may not come in with peaceful intentions. The person may come in with some hidden agenda, and that is why when you bring the likes of America into your problem, in some cases, you are escalating the problem. And then when you look at the problem historically, any country that America assists, you know, is almost helped to escalate the conflict. So I agree with Gumi that involving America, you know, will escalate the problem. But in dealing with our problems as it were, you cannot do away with America because we do not have the facilities for collecting real-time intelligence to be able to deal with these people. Americans are not coming to fight with they won't fight with our soldiers. They are not bringing in their soldiers. Most of the time, they only help to train our soldiers, and most of the time, they provide us actionable intelligence because America is watching all parts of the world. So as bandits are coming to the southwest, as bandits are coming to the southeast, you know, their satellite is studying them, and therefore, the kind of intelligence they provide us is to say, these people are moving in this direction. Nigerian army, station yourself in so we cannot dispense with that kind of support. So Gumi Gumi has its own approach to solving this problem. His own approach is bandits invite them, give them money, treat them as you treated Niger Delta militants, you know. But when you look at the DDR processes in Zamfara, Katsina, and early Kaduna, you realize that these people will come. In some cases, they will swear by the Quran. But after taking money, after this thing, they will go back to fight. So these are not people who are really committed to any serious agreement. And I don't see them as doing better if the Gumi approach is used. But Gumi kept saying that the problem is escalating because they are not giving these people money. They've given them money severally. They've tried to rehabilitate them severally, but it's not working.
Okay, because of time now, I just want to get your opinion, because I watched one of your interviews and you said what is going on in Benue, especially when the attacks was very intense, is not Farmer-Ida clash. It's more of a genocide. Are there similarities in that way, just very quickly?
Well, I think, you know, as I said, what is going on in Benue is not a Farmer-Ida crisis. And when you look at what is going on in Niger State, you look at what is going on in Oyo State, these people, it's not a question of farmers having problems with anybody. But this is a question of genocide. People just coming in to say they want to take over your land, they want to kill your people. And so, and why this is important is that the differentiation helps to determine what you should do. Things that you do to terrorists are different from what you do to farmers that are clashing with others.
All right. A big thanks to you, Professor. We need to go this evening. Peace is not merely the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice and, of course, a security system. And, of course, just like I mentioned, it's been able to highlight several things. But then, before we go, as Nigeria continues to confront complex security challenges, one thing remains clear. Sustainable peace requires deliberate strategy. I think he mentioned political will as well, strong institutions, and collective responsibility. And we must also be careful when it comes to reintegrating certain persons, into our security system. My sincere appreciation to Professor Isaac Olawale Albert for sharing his insight with us today on Politics Explained. I'm Oluwayemi Adelakun. Thank you for listening. And remember, understanding politics, security, is the first step towards shaping a better society. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.